are a community. We are a family. We are Baltimore.
City schools hold a day of remembrance for children's lives lost to violence in Baltimore this year, as emotions pour out a push for safety and security for Baltimore's young people. City leaders seem to be paying more attention to quality of life crime. Frustrated neighbors speak out on the potential political motivation behind it.
Window dressing, it's just a show.
More and more young people are finding themselves on the wrong side of the law. How the head of the Department of Juvenile Services is working to put them on the right path.
We really have to engage the rest of the people in their community.
Take a look at this video of thieves stealing catalytic converters. We talked to a law enforcement expert on what you can do to protect your car.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
And good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. At this time tomorrow night, social workers will be out on the streets looking for young people out after curfew. Tomorrow is the first day the curfew will be enforced. It's Mayor Brandon Scott's attempt to stop the rise in juvenile crime we're seeing in Baltimore City and really around the state this year. 10 young lives have already been lost in Baltimore City. This is a look at just some of the victims. The youngest, just 12 years old. Others were shot and killed near their schools. Nearly 40 other young people have survived shootings this year.
Our children are dying. Like, I don't see how this makes sense whatsoever.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker will give us a look at the cost of the curfew. But our team coverage begins with Keith Daniels and a ceremony honoring the young lives lost. Keith?
Well, Mary, we're live outside of City School headquarters. All quiet here at this hour, but earlier today, the ringing of the bell for students caught in the city's gun violence. It's an occasion that any school official would rather avoid, an event no one wants to organize, a ceremony no one wants to attend. But outside public schools headquarters in East Baltimore, CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises read the names.
Isaiah Carter, 16 years old. Michaela Strouder, 15 years old. Jeremiah Brogdon, 17 years old.
The name, age, and bell tone for each life lost, honoring the 19 students killed by gun violence in the city within the past year. The youngest student, 8 years old.
These young people individually represented potential. They represented different gifts and talents and personalities. They are not just numbers.
For the past 5 years, the school district has held what's called a ceremony of peace and remembrance for victims. Deputy Mayor Dr. Letitia Jaraza, a mother, representing the mayor at this year's ceremony, with more deaths than any other year since the program started in 2018.
That means 19 children didn't show up for dinner last night. 19 children won't get the chance to close out the school year with their classmates this year.
This year's ceremony comes as the city copes with the disturbing trend of gun violence involving youth and what can be done about it, including expecting tougher legislation from lawmakers in Annapolis, along with the city's delegation, a point we pushed with the mayor recently.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I mean, how satisfied are you with legislators? Did they do enough?
Am I completely satisfied? No, because we didn't get everything we wanted. But does that dismay me? No. We go back, we work with our partners in partnership. This one thing I won't do is call people out.
But back at the ceremony, Michelle Hines, mother of 16-year-old Isaiah Carter, who was fatally shot in March, is watching and waiting for accountability.
We're grieving our kids. We need to, what's the solutions? This year it was 19, last year it was less. Why does this happen every year? What's the real root of this issue?
A mother tonight looking for answers. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
All right, Keith, thank you. Lots of emotion at that ceremony. Well, as we mentioned, 10 juveniles have been killed in the first 5 months of this year. That is about half of the number of children killed in the last 4 years. Last month, Fox 45 News spoke with one mom who moved her son out of Baltimore City to protect him from the violence.
This is getting crazy, and I'm recognizing that the parents care more about going out to clubs, partying. I just told you my son had a Uzi. I'm not going to lie to the public. This is a crisis right now.
Well, we want to hear from you. Do you feel Baltimore City is a safe place to raise a child? This poll just opened. So far, 100% of voters say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. Well, Mayor Brandon Scott's response to the youth violence, a summer youth engagement plan called Be More this summer. The plan includes enforcement of the curfew, which starts tomorrow. Tonight, we're digging into how much that plan will cost taxpayers. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker continues our team coverage.
Skepticism surrounding the city's new youth curfew plan is coming from all angles.
It's unbelievably poorly thought out.
It's not going to work because
the
kids
young
don't
people
want
are
to
going
go
to
to those
events.
places.
Well, no.
Even city council members expressing concern it simply won't work.
I want this to work, but I still see these young people not obeying.
This is not a tool that's going to make the Baltimore City safer. This is not a tool that's going to go against the young folks who are intentionally creating unproductive activity at night. So I mean, I think we just have to accept that and literally move on.
The youth curfew goes into effect tomorrow. Those under 14 need to be off the streets by 9 p.m. and youth from 14 to 17 can stay out until 11 on the weekends, 10 o'clock otherwise. Youth will be asked to leave on their own or be transported by bus to a Youth Connection Center, of which there will be two. One here at a recreation center in Park Heights, another at a church community center. The city will supply food and games in an attempt to locate their parents, but the kids can refuse to go.
At the end of the day, though, if a young person decides that they are not going to go, I want to remind members of the public and members of this committee that the curfew ordinance does not, young people are not violating criminal code, and so we are not forcing them to go anywhere.
How much is this costing?
That's a great question.
I mean, it's an exorbitant amount of money to have all of these things open and have that many people walking around.
We reached out to the mayor's office asking the total costs associated with the Youth Connection Centers and the buses that will transport youth to them. According to the mayor's office, the summer youth engagement strategy as a whole, which also includes music and art festivals, sports and cookouts, has a budgeted price tag of $1,892, with agency employee salaries costing the most.
It's a gamble with public safety, but also with taxpayer dollars.
David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance says the city is taking a big chance.
Here's the problem, is that these centers may staff up. They may have a lot of food allocated, which is going to cost money. And if the kids don't agree to go to the centers, this is food and money that could go to waste. There is no guarantee that these services will be utilized, yet the city is going to be paying for the services.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
When it comes to engagement with kids, the city has identified multiple neighborhoods where young people tend to gather. They are Fells Point, Federal Hill, and the Inner Harbor. The city referring to these areas as static locations where they will make sure officers and social workers will be prepared to engage with young people. You can find everything you need to know about the curfew on our website, foxbaltimore.com. And stay with Fox 45 News. We will have complete coverage, including the mayor's special events tomorrow as the plan goes into effect. Streets popping wheelies in front of our cameras, dirt bikes and ATVs, they are back. This was Tuesday, just hours after police shared success on a crackdown. Residents of Pigtown reached out to Fox 45 News saying they are not seeing those effects. Jeff Abel is live as some see the show of force as more political than practical. Jeff?
There is still a lot of skepticism out here from many residents who say they've heard the promises and are still waiting on the action.
Just the past couple days, the dirt bikes have been nonstop.
In Pigtown, residents have complained for months, and tonight, they're back. The nightly roar that is terrorizing the community, and officers, they say, seem less than interested.
They sit there and watch them.
That's why residents were stunned this week when city police announced a crackdown on illegal dirt bikes.
Baltimore is not your playground. You will be arrested for riding the dirt bike in Baltimore City.
It's one in a string of crimes that the city is now publicly addressing. Earlier this year, City Hall established a no squeegee zones after years of complaints. And this week, City Hall rolled out a new enforcement plan aimed at getting curfew violators off the streets.
So I think there's an increased sense of urgency because there's an election year next year.
Political scientist John Deedy suspects the mayor's recent attack on quality of life crimes could have a lot to do with voters and the upcoming campaign season.
Things can be awful for 3 years, but in the election year, if people feel better, they will have amnesia about the previous 3 years because they will look and see how are things at the moment. And that's how voters will think.
It's a nightmare.
But for residents in Pigtown, some too afraid to be identified, they've heard the get tough promises and are still waiting on the solution.
It's all window dressing. It's just a show. It's that, look what we're doing, but they're not doing anything.
Even if these plans prove unsuccessful, Deedy says it's often the appearance of action that gets voters' attention. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Well, City State's Attorney Ivan Bates also cracking down on quality of life crimes this summer with his new citation docket. Bates introduced it during a Fox 45 News town hall last month. It will focus on trespassing and loitering. It will also offer wraparound services for mental health concerns and drug treatment, also opportunities for job training. City State's attorney says the services will be offered to people as a way to divert them from the criminal justice system. But if people don't want it, they will be prosecuted. And breaking tonight, the Maryland State Supreme Court has put the reinstatement of Adnan Syed's murder conviction on hold while it reviews the case after Hayman Lee's family successfully argued their victims' rights were violated. The order cites that the Lee family did not object while awaiting final rulings by the state's highest court on the decision to set him free.
All right, taking a look at the forecast on into this evening. Well, first, if you're going to be getting out of town and maybe trying to hit the roads going to Ocean City, I think you're going to be A-OK. Temperatures are in the 50s to right around 60. Annapolis, Columbia, all the way back across western Maryland, eastern shore. Everybody quiet. Take a look at the HD radar. There's rain to the south. That could be threatening as we head into the Memorial Day holiday weekend. For now, though, looking quiet into tomorrow morning. I'm going to let you know how it looks day by day if you're staying here or you're going to the beach. That's coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Next on Fox 45 News at 10, a Maryland 15-year-old known as Baby K, accused of trying to kill a teenager on a school bus, now wanted in a murder just days later. The connection between the two as U.S. Marshals join an all-out manhunt. Why the man in charge of Maryland's Department of Juvenile Services stands by past comments that youth and young adults should not be treated as criminals, even when they're guilty. Mackenzie Frost's exclusive interview coming up. And at 10:30, it was caught on video, a rash of catalytic converter thefts. 3 things you can do to protect your car from this costly crime. Police in Prince George's County looking for a juvenile suspect accused of trying to shoot and kill another child on a school bus earlier this month. Police say 3 young teens tried to fire at the victim's head and chest 3 times, but the gun jammed. 2 of those teenagers were arrested, but a 15-year-old who goes by the name Baby K is still on the run. Police are taking the rare step of sharing the juvenile's mugshot due to the nature of the investigation. Police say he's also the suspect in the murder of a 23-year-old in Northeast D.C. just 2 days after the bus attack. She's the older sister of one of the other boys charged in the attack. The mother of the boy attacked has a message for Baby K.
You're a coward and you need to go turn yourself in. You need to turn yourself in today.
Well, holding young offenders accountable for their actions is a big concern for many people, especially as the rise in juvenile crime continues throughout Maryland. Well, now the Department of Juvenile Services Secretary Vincent Schiraldi is laying out his views on keeping young adults out of the criminal justice system. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has this exclusive interview.
DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi is doubling down on some of those comments that were a point of contention during his confirmation process. He says it comes down to finding other ways to keeping tabs on some of these young people. And that brings us to DJS supervision, which right now doesn't seem to be working for everyone. This Washington Post op-ed, co-written by Vincent Schiraldi nearly a decade ago, brought up by some lawmakers as a concern. But the newly appointed and confirmed secretary doesn't see it as an issue. That was brought up during the confirmation hearing. Some lawmakers had concerns about that, and your views as a secretary for an agency plagued with problems. Do you see their concerns?
Many agencies are plagued with problems. It's not just DJS has problems and nobody else has problems. Everything else is perfect.
But you're the secretary of this.
When you look at, right, so you're asking me a question you want me to answer, right? So let me answer the question. If you ask most of your viewers, how different were you, particularly the men, at the age of 17 versus the age of 19? Were you dramatically more ready to engage in adult responsibility and adult behaviors when you were a freshman or a sophomore in college than you were when you were a senior in high school? I think most people would say no.
Schiraldi notes his day-to-day work now is focusing on the young people 18 and under who are under his supervision at DJS. And now he says a lot of those kids end up on a GPS monitoring device. There are examples. We had a 12-year-old who was gunned down in South Baltimore not too long ago. He had a GPS ankle monitor on under the supervision of DJS. After examples of the supervision breakdown. In 2019, we had the 16-year-old who was part of the group of kids who were charged with Officer Amy Caprio's death. He too was on supervision, so that didn't work for the public safety aspect for the community. What needs to improve for the supervision, the probation, the parole within DJS to ensure that there is safety for the community and for these kids who are on it?
Yeah, so supervision all by itself, by a government-funded probation officer or community supervisor, that's just this much of the problem. We really have to engage the rest of the people in their community.
Schiraldi, like some in the more progressive criminal justice reform arenas, pushing for a more community-based supervision approach.
We got to get in there with those kids and interrupt that flow and put them on a path to success. That's where we'll have our best success, not just because some PO sees you once a week in his office and has you, pee in a cup and tell you to go forth and sin no more. That's not ever going to do it.
But how to do that and how soon those ideas will become a reality remains unclear. Do you believe the safety of the community as a whole outweighs a young person's ability to stay in the community to get those rehabilitative services in some of these facilities that may or may not even be working?
I think that's an either-or question, and I reject the concept. I think that we need to do both and. We have a system, laws passed over the years by the legislatures, judges judging, prosecutors prosecuting, DJS doing our part. When the judges say to secure them, I need to secure them. When it's time for them to come back home to their communities, I need to have the kinds of programs that are going to make sure they don't reoffend when they come home and that they thrive and do better. And that's my job, and that's what I'm going to do.
How long do you think it'll take before that is a reality?
I think we're going to, we're never going to, when I leave here, whenever that is, there's still going to be stuff to fix. So it's never going to be a perfect system. But I think it's our job day to day to be improving the system and always looking at both turning young people's lives around so that they can thrive and public safety. And that's what I want to be judged on, and I'm sure I will be.
A tall task for a secretary overseeing a department with programming, staffing, and success challenges to overcome. All while many lawmakers say the success of many of their criminal justice plans hinge on the success of DJS. The governor's office tells me that top-to-bottom review of DJS that Governor Wes Moore ordered should be done as soon as possible. It's still unclear what will come from those findings. But in the meantime, if you want to watch my entire conversation with DJS Secretary Schiraldi, all you have to do is scan the QR code at the bottom of your screen, and it'll take you right there. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
It is an extreme approach, as we detail in our complaint.
A battle over books in Montgomery County coming up at 10:30. A closer look at the fight over how much say parents have in what their children are reading at school.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wasting no time. Who would get the axe if he makes it to the White House? I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington with whose job could be on the line.
And as we head into the Memorial Day holiday weekend, a tale of two cities, I suppose. Here in Baltimore, if you're going to be celebrating or commemorating, temperatures at 73 on Saturday. Partial sun, some showers on Sunday, 70 and 80 on Memorial Day with a spot shower too, especially in the morning and midday. The other city, Ocean City, of course, 64 degrees on Saturday. A lot cooler here. Sunday, Monday, some spotty showers. Only a big toe in the water there, 64 degrees. I'll let you know how it looks if you want to do some boating this weekend. Stick around. That's coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis officially running for the top of the GOP ticket in 2024. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has a look at who DeSantis says is on the chopping block if he wins the White House.
In his first television interview, newly minted presidential candidate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declaring where he would clean house should he win.
No, I would not keep Chris Wray as director of the FBI. There'd be a new one on day one. I think that's very important.
The FBI and DOJ increasingly a target from top Republicans who argue the agencies have been turned into tools Democrats use to go after political enemies like Donald Trump while protecting insiders like the president's son, Hunter Biden.
If we cannot craft authorities that are in line with our values and our belief on the Constitution and particularly the First Amendment, then yes, I think that we ought to take a meat cleaver rather than an X-Acto knife to some of these agencies.
Trump taking to Truth Social after his indictment by the Manhattan DA, writing, quote, Republicans in Congress should defund the DOJ and FBI until they come to their senses. DeSantis signaling support during his campaign launch conversation on Twitter.
If an agency is engaging in conduct that is outside the realm of what is legal, or you think it's not good for the public interest, then you can remove the funding for those operations.
Some, like Mike Howell, director of the Oversight Project at the Heritage Foundation, argue institutions like the FBI need a complete operation overhaul.
I think we're heading towards that path where it is going to be basically commonly accepted that our federal government and these supposedly neutral institutions are incapable of being neutral in this current political environment. And so what we need, our political leaders, is to get ahead of that moment and start providing some actual legislative fixes.
Republicans continuing their investigations into the weaponization of the federal government. Democrats trying to complicate those efforts by raising questions on the legitimacy of key whistleblower witnesses. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Who do you think should be the 2024 Republican presidential nominee? Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, or someone else? So far, 50% of voters say someone else. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote and click on the polls tab to weigh in.
20 minutes later, $20,000 worth of damage.
Thousands of dollars in damage done. Just a few minutes right after the break, the crime caught on camera and how to protect your vehicles.
Anonymous, no more. I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where a whistleblower inside the IRS is now showing his face. What he's alleging, coming up.
We are following three big stories at 10:30. A whistleblower inside the IRS is showing his face, what he's revealing about the Hunter Biden investigation. A group of Montgomery County parents demanding the right to opt out of LGBTQ-themed books. We're hearing from both sides of the debate over the new policy. In Baltimore County, thieves have targeted one business 6 separate times, stealing a pricey car part. The thieves cost that business thousands of dollars. Their crime caught on camera. Fox 45's Vincent Hill walks us through how it happened and how you can protect yourself. Vincent?
Yeah, Mary, I want to go ahead and show you these cameras, but they didn't stop the criminals from taking their time and costing the business thousands of dollars. Yodi Brody walking Fox 45 through his own crime scene.
We had the camera of them pulling in. We had the camera of them parking here.
Video footage showing several individuals casing out Queen Bee Pest Services in Pikesville for several minutes before making their move.
1 car's down, 2 cars down, 3 cars down, 4 trucks down.
The thieves literally sawing off catalytic converters, which can be heard on security cameras. Take a listen.
Just went one by one. I think 5-6 minutes a truck. 20 minutes later, $20,000 worth of damage.
Brody believed his business was safe and surprised by what happened.
This is a nice neighborhood. We shouldn't be having this level of crime where it can put people out of business.
This is a crime that's been around for about 30 years.
Law enforcement analyst Melissa Pinkleton says nowhere is safe when it comes to catalytic converter theft.
They're easy to get to. They can do it quickly, and they can make a lot of money from it because the catalytic converter has 3 precious metals in it. It has platinum, palladium, and rhodium.
Meaning it's a cash cow for thieves. According to Carfax, rhodium converters can be sold on the black market for $300, and the metal itself costs up to $10,000 per ounce because of a global shortage of catalytic converters. Pinkleton says there are a few ways to protect yourself from being a victim.
Mean, growly dogs, they are a deterrent. I have seen plenty of criminals go away from one place to another just because of the dogs.
She says to also monitor where you're storing your vehicles.
If they're lucky enough to have a garage, that would be very big, very helpful and important.
But if you can't do that, Pinkleton says, make sure your vehicle is parked where it's more visible to reduce the chance of it being an easy target.
So a lot of times these vehicles are parked, they're parked, in the back somewhere and there's no real lighting to it. Maybe make sure that you have a spotlight on there.
Queen Bee is offering a $1,000 reward for information about that vehicle or the suspects involved in this. Meanwhile, Baltimore County Police are investigating. For an hour live in Pikesville, Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Vincent, thank you. Well, the former campaign treasurer for Baltimore County Councilwoman Kathy Bevins is pleading guilty to felony theft and perjury for stealing more than $100,000 from 2 campaigns in recent years. Prosecutors say Chris McCollum used $64,000 in campaign funds to pay a personal credit card bill and deposited tens of thousands of dollars in checks meant for the campaign into his own account.
I think it's essential to the integrity of our elections that people who hold positions of responsibility in political campaigns be held accountable for their actions. And that indeed is what happened today.
Fox 45 News spoke with McCollum's attorney, who says he has taken full responsibility for his mistakes and looks forward to putting the matter behind him. He will be sentenced in July. Well, a group of families suing Montgomery County Superintendent and the school board over the school system's new LGBTQ book policy. They argue some of the school system's books are not age appropriate. Nick Minock from our Sinclair sister station in D.C. spoke with both sides.
I've been really, really proud of MCPS for holding strong on that.
Montgomery County Public Schools graduate Max Gutman supports the school system's new policy, which instructs teachers to utilize LGBTQ+ lessons and texts with all students.
I wasn't out as trans in high school, but struggled a lot with being different and people being able to tell that I wasn't cishet. I was really excited to hear that MCPS is doing what's right for families and for our students.
The school system told Montgomery County families that students and families may not choose to opt out of engaging with any instructional materials. And as such, teachers will not send home letters to inform families when inclusive books are read in the future.
It is an extreme approach, as we detail in our complaint.
Will Hahn is senior counsel at the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, which is representing Muslim and Christian families and challenging MCPS's book policy in court.
Our clients represent families from all across Montgomery County of diverse religious faiths. And while they have differences on those issues, they share one thing in common, which is it's that the upbringing and their education, especially when it comes to sensitive issues like a person's identity, their child's own identity. And unfortunately, Montgomery County has taken an approach here that says, we're going to cut the parents out.
Some of the books named in the lawsuit include Born Ready, the true story of a boy named Penelope, Uncle Bobby's Wedding, and Pride Puppy. Jan Gutman is an educator and would like MCPS's book policy to stay in place.
As parent educator, that to opt out, you can't cherry pick who's in your community.
Nick Minock, Fox 45 News.
Well, the Anne Arundel County Board of Education considering a new policy limiting what types of flags can be displayed in the classroom. The proposal made during last night's meeting would limit the acceptable flags to the United States flag, the state flag, the Annapolis flag, and the Anne Arundel County flag. It also says exceptions to the rule could be made at the principal's discretion if they believe a different flag provides educational value. Well, a similar policy is in place in Carroll County schools. That school system banned political flags, including the LGBTQ pride flag last year. That sparked a debate over representation in schools. Critics say the policy is harmful. Supporters argue it takes politics out of the classroom. Students are still allowed to display political materials like pride flags on their clothing. And you can find more on Carroll County's policy on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Well, Kentucky parents say they are heartbroken after their children with special needs were left out of a 5th grade graduation celebration. The students were given yard signs to celebrate moving on to middle school, but none were given to those in the special education department.
We had the most fragile and vulnerable of our students excluded in the most cruel ways.
Well, one of the parents says the school has apologized as well as made those students their own signs. Taking a live look from Capitol Hill now, where talks over the debt limit continue. The White House says negotiators met virtually this morning. They are working on behalf of President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to broker a deal before the June 1st deadline. Now, both sides are saying default is not an option. The White House is declining to say if there is a plan B in case a deal isn't reached in time.
What I can say is this is the only option that we have is for Congress to do its job, for Congress to deal with the debt limit. That's the only option in front of us. That is the best option for the American people. That's the best way to make sure that our economy doesn't get turned on its head.
President Biden will travel to Camp David for Memorial Day weekend, as well as his home in Wilmington, Delaware. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy also leaving for the holiday weekend. Negotiators are expected to continue working. Taking a look now at the Fox box, top left, the worst of the typhoon is over in Guam, with the governor of the American island in the Western Pacific lifting emergency declarations. The road to recovery is expected to take weeks. The priority right now is to restore power and water service. Top right, a major step forward for electric vehicle use. Ford owners will soon have access to the 12,000 Tesla supercharger stations in North America. The manufacturing rival struck a deal to grant access to the fast charging stations thanks to an adapter. Newer Ford models will be fitted with Tesla's charging plug. Bottom left, Microsoft is appealing the UK's decision to block its merger with video game powerhouse Activision Blizzard. The U.S. has similar concerns about shrinking competition, with Fed suing to block the takeover. Bottom right, moments ago, Texas lawmakers filed 20 articles of impeachment against State Attorney General Ken Paxton. Investigators say Paxton abused his office to help an Austin real estate developer who was a campaign donor. He denies